Good morning. Today is Wednesday, March the 3rd, and I thank you for joining us for our daily Lenten devotion as we continue reading our book, Bright Evening Star by Madeleine. I still wanted someone to explain everything to me so that I could understand it, explain it all, so there would be no more painful questions. I knew something was wrong with my own thinking, and I continued to ask my minister friends all my difficult questions, and they continued very kindly to answer them with all the good answers that they had been given in seminary. They tried to find facts for me to prove their theology, but there are very few facts. Facts. We know that there was someone called Jesus who was crucified about 2,000 years ago, and that's about all we know as far as historical facts are concerned. Even in my confusion, I knew that I needed more than facts. I tried to believe, but when I wrestled with theology, I felt that I was surrounded by a deep, dense fog through which I could not see. My heart believed even when my mind faltered. I listened to my heart, and I wrote a wrinkle in time as an affirmation that there was indeed light in the darkness with which I was surrounded. I wrote it for God. When I finished, I was excited because I thought it was the best thing I had ever written. I waited with anticipation for word from the publisher who had done my most recent book. She diddled and dawdled and finally said, "I may be turning down another Alice in Wonderland, but I'm afraid of it." Most of the subsequent rejections were not that encouraging, just the plain printed rejection slips without a personal word. It hurt. I had had 6 books published, overall with remarkable success. After nearly a decade in the country, we moved back to New York and my husband's world of the theater, and I had great hope that once I was back in the city of my birth, the city that was the center of art and music and literature, a publisher would soon see what I had been hoping to write in this book and say yes to it. I've written before about the long struggle to find a publisher. I didn't know that mainline publishers did not publish science fiction. I did not know that science fiction novels didn't have female protagonists. I struggled to keep on keeping on. I painted bright murals on the cupboard doors of the kitchen. Our children were in Episcopal school, so we went to the local Episcopal church for consistency's sake. My husband was steadily employed in the theater, but like every actor I have ever known, when the play he was in closed, he was convinced that he would never ever have a job again. But he did, and we enjoyed each other and our children and our friends. And finally, A Wrinkle in Time was published. And after that, I did not have the long months and years of waiting to hear from a publisher. I began to get speaking engagements to librarians, groups, teachers' meetings, colleges, universities. I was invited to speak at Wheaton College, and that was my introduction to the evangelical world. It is amazing to me that I was in my mid-40s before I had even heard of the evangelical world, and I didn't hear about it until just before I left for Wheaton, when the dean of the cathedral came into the library where I was a volunteer librarian and told me about it. I listened, open-mouthed. But the moment I reached Wheaton, I felt at home, and 2 of my dearest friends had come from that first experience now over a quarter of a century ago. The evangelical world didn't seem to me to be much different from the Congregational Church in northwest Connecticut, except it didn't have the New England reticence. By precept, I was taught spontaneous prayer, and I would be ever grateful that when I am asked sometimes out of the blue to pray, I can do it, and without embarrassment. I felt loved and affirmed at Wheaton, and I saw little or no conflict between this new world I was meeting and the Episcopal world which I grew up in. Wrinkle and its companion books were affirmed as Christian books, though I didn't then and don't now like that label. Basically, I don't like labels. And what is a Christian book? Is it something that will be appreciated and understood only by Christians? Is it telling the good news of those who already know it? Is it preaching to the choir? I want my books to bring joy and hope and courage, and I pray that they are and will be inclusive and not exclusive. Meanwhile, my faith grew slowly. I just lived long enough to live through pain and joy and birth and death and failure and fulfillment. Slowly, I let go my demands for reasonable explanations. I lived long enough to grow old and believe once again in the impossible. The impossible is easiest for the very young and the very old. If I am blessed with continuing to grow old, the impossible will become less and less difficult. The impossible is all that makes life itself possible, with all the anxieties and griefs and pains that come with experience. Joy too. I don't forget joy, but joy sometimes comes in the midst of pain. Finally, I understand that I had to believe in the impossible rather than try to prove it. Thank you for joining me today for our Lenten reading. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. So take care. God bless. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.